centimeter in length, weighs about 90 grams in males and about 85 grams in the females. It has got distinct exocrine and endocrine function, as we have talked about. The exocrine component, that is almost 80 to 85%, while the rest of the portion is the connective tissue stroma and the endocrine component, which is almost composed of one minimal cluster of islets of Langerhans. Here is a photomicrograph showing you the exocrine pancreas and the endocrine pancreas. Here we can delineate with the color so that you may see which is the portion which is the exocrine and which is the portion which is endocrine. This whole portion out which I am encircling out by this red arrow, outside this red arrow is the exocrine pancreas, while inside it is the endocrine or a islet of Langerhans, which is composed of four different types of the cells: the alpha cells, the beta cells, and the delta cells, and the cells which are associated with the release of somatostatin. The function of the pancreas, the exocrine pancreas, as we have already talked about, it secretes digestive enzymes which are contained in a bicarbonate rich fluid, and about 2 to 2.5 ml of it are secreted per day, and it is controlled by the neural and the humoral signals. The secretin and the cholecystokinin are the two enzymes which control its excretion of the pancreatic juices. The secretin mainly stimulates the water and the bicarbonate excretion, which is there not only to neutralize the acidic load which is coming from the stomach and the small gut, and the cholecystokinin which stimulates the digestive proenzymes. Stimulus for secretin includes acid load and fatty acid. So the two different types of the secretions, where they are mixed together, the enzymes, they are kept in a proenzyme form so that they may not digest the substance of the pancreas itself. This is very important in order to prevent the pancreas from being auto-digested by these enzymes. And how this function is performed, we shall see in a while. And here you can see that the fatty acids and the acid load, this is very important in stimulating the secretion of these different enzymes. For cholecystokinin, it is fatty acid and proteins and the digestive products which are coming from the stomach. The proenzymes which are elaborated by pancreas, why are they elaborated in the proform? Because to protect the substance of the pancreas from being auto-digested by these enzymes. These are the number one, the trypsinogen. This is the main or the key enzyme which one gets activated, not only activates the other enzymes, but it is very important from the point of view that it also can self-inhibit it by a mechanism, so that the stimulation of these enzymes or conversion of these two enzymes to the actual enzymes is inhibited. The chymotrypsinogen, the procarboxypeptidases, the proelastases, the calcinogen, and the phospholipases A and B, elastases, and upon other lipases and amylases which are secreted in active form. From here you can see that almost all the enzymes are there which can not only digest the carbohydrates, they can digest the proteins, they can digest the fats. So all enzymes are contained in the pancreatic secretion which are responsible for this. This is very important to remember, because when you will learn about the pathogenesis of acute pancreatitis, these are the enzymes. For example, the elastases, they lead damage to the vessel walls, leading to hemorrhage there. Similarly, the elastases, they are also responsible for this, and so on and so forth. The lipase, that is responsible for destruction of the fatty tissue. The activation of these enzymes that occurs in the lumen of the duodenum, brush border by the enteropeptidases, which cleaves trypsinogen to its active form. This enzyme then activates the other enzyme. The prevention of autodigestion, as we talked about, number one, how it is prevented. Most of the enzymes they are synthesized as proenzymes. Activation requires prior activation of the trypsinogen by enterokinases. So until and unless the trypsinogen is not activated to its active form, these enzymes they are not functional. The trypsin inhibitors are present in the ductal and acinar cells in the form of different, for example, of one is which is also involved in the pathogenesis of recurrent uh, appendicitis, acute appendicitis in the early childhood, that is serine proteases which are present there, which cause destruction of this enzyme or inhibition of this enzyme. Trypsin contains a self-recognition cleavage site that allows trypsin to inactivate itself. This is very important, that by nature or by the Allah, this has been provided, this system, that trypsin can itself self-cleave it to deactivate it, so that it doesn't run amok, or the enzymes they don't keep on digesting everything. The lining of the gastrointestinal tract may be the target there. The lysosomal hydrolases are capable of degrading zymogen granules when normal acinar excretion is impaired or blocked. If somehow the normal excretion is not properly controlled, the lysosomal granules are there which contain the lysosomal hydrolases, which can destroy these granules. The zymogen granules have an acidic pH and a low calcium concentration. So from here you can see that normally they get activated at an alkaline pH. So the acidic pH and low calcium concentration, when the calcium concentration is high, the pH becomes alkaline, these enzymes get activated. So an acidic pH and a low calcium concentration is mandatory to keep these enzymes in a inactivated form. Now coming towards one of the most important topic, not only important from its you can say the mortality and morbidity associated with even the most well-equipped hospitals, the mortality rate is very high due to acute pancreatitis. Though this condition is self-resolving, sometimes this self-resolve, there's a, say, the bout of inflammation may be automatically terminated. Acute pancreatitis is a group of reversible lesions. Reversible, that is by itself can be stopped, characterized by inflammation of the pancreas, ranging in severity from edema and fat necrosis to parenchymal necrosis with severe hemorrhage. What does it mean? That there may be simple edema and fat necrosis to extensive necrosis with severe hemorrhage. And the edema, you know, this is a feature of the acute inflammation. The fat necrosis is because of the lipases which are contained in that, and the parenchymal necrosis may occur because of the different elastases and phospholipases which can damage the membrane and which can damage the vessel wall, leading to severe hemorrhage in the substance of the. What are the different etiological agents? We'll first very briefly go through these, and then we will discuss their in order of their severity or in order of their frequency. Most common causes, the alcohol, this is most common in the Western societies. Gallstones, they come at number 2. They are more common in the Eastern societies, for example, in areas like Pakistan and India, etc. The hypercalcemia, hyperlipidemia, malnutrition, abdominal trauma, penetrating ulcers, malignancy, drugs. These include the steroids, sulfonamides, furosemide, thiazide. You must be familiar with these names. Sulfonamides are antibiotics, furosemides are diuretic, very commonly used. Thiazide is also a diuretic which is used as an antihypertensive. Infection, especially the viral infection, among them is the mumps. Not only in addition to the mumps, which involve mostly the salivary glands, may also lead to the inflammation of the pancreas and other glandular tissue. Coxsackie virus, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, the Ascaris and the Pronorchus sinensis, these are the to parasites which can lead to the acute pancreatitis, and this is usually by the blockage of the pancreatic duct, as we will see in the pathogenesis of acute pancreatitis, which different mechanisms are involved. We will come to know that there is sometimes the direct injury to the cells and sometimes there is obstruction of the pancreatic duct which can lead to it. The structural abnormalities, choledochoceles and pancreatic divisum, and finally the hereditary pancreas. It is wrongly typed here. The less common causes, pancreatic divisum, long common duct, carcinoma of the head of the pancreas and other cancers, scaris as we talked about by blocking the pancreatic outflow, Chinese liver fluke, ischemia from bypass surgery, the fatty necrosis, pregnancy, infections other than mumps including varicella zoster, repeated marathon running. This is very important. Should remember that the trauma or dehydration which may occur there can lead to increase or inspissated secretions, and which can lead to blockage of the pancreatic duct by the proteinaceous materials leading to the pancreatitis. Cystic fibrosis, valproic acid is again an anti-epileptic drug, anorexia nervosa or bulimia, and the familial one, and codeine reaction. The codeine is an antipyretic, you can say analgesic, which is very important. This drug is used nowadays very commonly, rather its derivative is used for the control of pain. So you must remember, few of them must be kept in mind while treating the patient with these drugs. Causes by demographic, it means that the regional areas, the most common cause of pancreatitis are as follows. The Western countries, in the United States, alcohol represents the primary etiology in about 65% of the acute pancreatitis cases, while in Sweden about 20% and in United Kingdom about 5%. As compared to the Eastern countries where the gallstones are more common, children, trauma, adolescents and young adults, mumps, and about 20% of the cases we don't know the cause of the acute pancreatitis. A mnemonic for causes, if you want to remember it, which is quite simple, I get smashed. From I, idiopathic, I told you about 20% cases are idiopathic. Gallstones, ethanol, T for trauma, S for steroids, M for mumps, M for malignancy, A for autoimmune, S for scorpion sting, H for hypercalcemia and hyperlipidemia, E for ERCP, and D for the drugs. So this mnemonic you can remember there because there are so many causes of the acute pancreatitis. So out of these, which are important and which can be remembered or memorized, are in the form of this mnemonic, I get smashed. The hereditary pancreatitis, this is because of inherited mutation in the gene which encodes for the pancreatic enzymes or their inhibitors. That is the spin K1 or the serine protease inhibitors Kezal type 1. This enzyme is involved, as I've told you, in the inhibition of the trypsinogen, which once gets activated, it can block the action of that, and if there is a mutation of this, there may be ongoing destruction because of the uninhibited enzyme, that is the trypsinogen. The autosomal dominant disorder is it with the 80% penetrance, though it's very rare, not so common, and it is characterized by recurrent attacks beginning in the early childhood. The child may come to you with recurrent bouts of central abdominal pain, and the typical characteristic of this pain is that this pain gets worse on lying, and it is somewhat relieved when the patient supines forward or sits. The germline mutation in cationic trypsinogen gene, also known as the RS, this is mainly the gene which is PRSSI which is involved. It leads to the abrogation of a fail-safe mechanism which inactivates the activated trypsin. What is meant by this abrogation of a fail-safe mechanism? It means that if somehow the trypsinogen is not inactivated, would run have amok, and there would be lot of destruction. So this is a system which is normally involved in it, and if it is uh, not active and doesn't become active in time, it may lead to excessive damage. So you should remember that the serine proteases or inhibitors of Chiral type 1 and the gene which is involved in the PRSSI, the mutation of which is responsible for this hereditary pancreatitis. The pathogenesis, as we talked in the different causes, the three mechanisms are usually proposed, that most likely these are the three underlying processes which lead to acute pancreatitis. This is the duct obstruction, the direct acinar cell injury, the duct obstruction, as we talked about the gallstone, we talked about the parasites, the acinar cell injury, as we talked about the different viral causes, for example, the viruses which may be directly cytotoxic, and defective intracellular transport of the enzymes. What does it mean? That you know that in the cells are the lysosomal granules, in the cell are the zymogen granules. The lysosomes have got the capability of degrading these zymogen granules. If somehow there is inadvertent transport, these lysosomal granules or the enzymes released from the lysosomal granules can disrupt the zymogen granules, leading to the autodigestion of the substance of the pancreas and start of the inflammation. So here is a schematic diagram showing you that what happens the gallstone when they obstruct the duct. As you know that the common bile duct and the pancreatic duct, they unite together and then they enter at ampulla of water. So if there is obstruction by the gallstone, the bile would be regurgitated, and this contains the interductal phospholipases which convert lysolecithin, and the lysolecithin, as we saw in case of the acute polycystitis, is injurious to the cells, is injurious to the cell membrane, the lipids contained in that, and that would lead to the injury and cell injury, then onwards the necrosis and inflammatory process will begin. Acinar cell injury, the exogenous substances, alcohol, viruses, mumps, drugs, thyroid, diabetic trauma, and the endogenous hypercalcemia, hyperlipidemia, and the nutritional deficiencies. The nutritional deficiencies, as we talked about, the prolonged parenteral nutrition and such sort of things, prolonged fasting can lead to increased cessation of the secretion of the pancreas, blockage of the small ducts, and can lead to that. Defective intracellular transport, as I talked about the metabolic injuries, experimental alcohol duct obstruction can deliver the proenzymes to the lysosomal compartment, and the intracellular activation of enzymes may be there. What is the consequence of that? The consequences of the activated enzyme is the interstitial inflammation and edema, the proteolysis by the proteases, the fat necrosis by the lipases and the phospholipases, and hemorrhage is there because of the elastases. So all these components put together, they lead to the acute pancreatitis, and the most likely triggering event is the trypsinogen activation, which activates the other enzymes, for example the phospholipases and the elastases, and trypsin can convert precalcrin to its activated form, triggering the kinase system. Activation of factor 12 may be there, which can activate to clotting. They activate the clotting system and the complement. So all these factors, they can lead to the enhanced uh, acute inflammation of the substance of the pancreas and other. As it is quite evident, the neutrophils which come to the side, they also add on to the problem by releasing superoxide, the respiratory burst or the proteolytic enzymes, the cathepsin B, D, and G, collagenases and elastases. And finally, the macrophages, they release the cytokines. Macrophages which come there as scavenger cells, they further mediate local and in severe cases systemic inflammatory responses. The early mediators defined to date are tumor necrosis factor, alpha, interleukin 6, and the interleukin 8, which are most likely involved in this process. Now, how does the what is the gross morphology? What we are concerned with is that in the minor cases there may be only fat necrosis and the edema, but in cases where there is advanced acute pancreatitis, the areas of red-black hemorrhage that I've told you because of the damage to the blood vessels, foci of yellow-white chalky necrosis, these may be seen. Changes which may extend to the extra pancreatic tissue. As you know, the pancreas is lying retroperitoneally, but it can digest that, and it can involve the omentum. And here is a photograph showing you the areas of small areas speckled here. This is in fact these areas. These are the all areas showing the hemorrhage there, encircled by the red line. Histology of acute pancreatitis, the basic alteration of what are those? The microvascular leakage causing edema, fat necrosis, and acute inflammatory reaction. Definitely that would be composed of the neutrophils and the proteolytic dissection of the pancreatic substance, destruction of the blood vessels, and subsequently the interstitial. You can see here in this micrograph, you can see the fat necrosis. I am encircling it for you. This is the whole area which has been necrosed. This is a fat necrosis, and these are the inflammatory cells which are there. So this is characteristic of the acute pancreatitis, the gross morphology and microscopy. Now the clinical features, these are very important. Abdominal pain, I said you this is normally central abdominal pain which is dull, boring, and sometimes it is not so much in severity, but sometimes it may be very severe, normally in the epigastric region, and it radiates to the back. The duration of the pain varies, but typically may last a day or so and may get self-resolved. The pain may be aggravated by eating or lying supine, as I told you, and it may be alleviated by fasting or lying on the left side with the knees and the hips flexed, or either on either side. It's not essentially, but left side is mostly relieved. Associated symptoms may be there. Anorexia, nausea, and vomiting are very common, and some patients experience diarrhea, and that is because most likely of the steatorrhea or the undigested fats. Uncommon findings are in severe necrotizing pancreatitis, the Cullen sign and the Gray Turner. You need not to remember it, but most likely the people concerned with the surgery or those who will teach you surgery, they will tell you is a bluish discoloration around the umbilicus resulting from the hemoperitoneum. This is very extensive. When the necrosis is very extensive, the pancreatic enzymes they leak and retroperitoneally, and then they can result in this hemorrhage which can appear around the bluish discoloration around the umbilicus. The Gray Turner is a sign of reddish brown discoloration along the flanks again, as the peritoneal is a retroperitoneal, the pancreas is a retroperitoneal organ, so it can lead to this discoloration, and that is again because of the elastases and these enzymes which damage the blood vessels, leading to the hemorrhage and leakage of the hemorrhagic fluid. Erythematous skin nodules may result from focal subcutaneous fat necrosis. So these are the signs of more homogeneous damage. In lab studies, this is the serum amylase, which is normally very much high in the first 24 hours, and 72 hours it is almost more than 10 times its normal. The different other enzymes which may be done, the alkyne phosphatase, total bilirubin, aspartate aminotransferases, and the alanine aminotransferase levels to search for the evidence of gallstone pancreatitis. In addition, an alanine aminotransferase level greater than 150 units per liter suggests gallstone pancreatitis. This is one suggestion, but is not so much diagnostic of calcium, cholesterol, triglycerides, all may be seen. The hypercalcemia or hyperlipidemia may be there. There may be hypocalcemia as well, because when there is a fat necrosis, there is a release of the free fatty acid which can combine with the calcium and they can cause a reduction in fact the amount of the calcium. Serum electrolytes, they may be quite disturbed, especially in cases where there is multi-organ failure, especially ARDS is associated with most severe cases of the acute pancreatitis. CBC count must be done because the hematocrit value carries a very much value in this. The leukocytosis is usually there. The complications of the acute pancreatitis. This is very important. Acute pancreatitis is not say self-resolved, though you cannot control it. You can only support by keeping the patient in a state that he shouldn't be given anything to eat. And nasogastric tube should be done. This systemic organ failure, shock, ARDS, and acute renal failure may be there. DIC, as you can recall from the as we talked about, that these enzymes, especially the trypsinogen, can activate the factor 12 and can lead to disseminated intravascular coagulation. Pancreatic abscess may be formation, pancreatic pseudosis. This is very important from the surgical point of view, and duodenal obstruction may be there. The C-reactive protein, this carries a lot of importance because C-reactive protein value can be obtained within 24 to 40 years after the presentation, and it provides some indication of prognosis. SCRP value in double figures, that is more than 10 milligram per deciliter, strongly indicates severe pancreatitis. As you know, the CRP is an acute phase reactant, so it's not specific for the pancreatitis only. The arterial blood gases, as I talked about, that this in case of the ARDS, there may be disturbance in the arterial blood gases, ABGs. Physical signs: fever and tachycardia, abdominal tenderness, muscle hardening. This is whole the clinical presentation which may be given in, say, the scenario-based questions. 60% of patients, they have got abdominal distension, gardening. The features of the acute peritonitis may be there. Bowel sound, they may become hypoactive. The patients, those who have got obstruction of the bile duct, they can common bile duct or the pancreatic duct, they may have jaundice, dyspnea, which may be caused by irritation of the diaphragm resulting from inflammation, or by a more serious condition such as respiratory distress syndrome. In severe cases, hemodynamic instability may be seen, which is sometimes seen in about 10% of patients. Hematemesis or melena sometimes may be developed in about 5% of the cases.